If you are hearing this story for the first time, sit down because it will run faster than your breath can follow. It begins in a time when the world was still pretending to be small, when maps were lies and oceans hid more than they revealed. In the palace of Ife, under the high gold-speckled ceiling where ancestral masks stared down from the walls, the Ooni sat with his chiefs, staring at a thing no Yoruba man had ever seen before. A fragment of ice. Not the kind that clings in a calabash. No, this was ocean ice taken from the bed of a shipwrecked sailor who has staggered into Lagos half dead, babbling of a place where the sea itself froze like yam in the harmattan. He called it the White Abyss, a land that would swallow any man's courage whole. Most thought he was drunk. The Ooni did not. Find it, the Ooni said simply, his voice as calm as a pond before rain. Bring me this abyss. And so began the most dangerous, most foolish, and most glorious expedition in the history of the kingdom of Ife. Ife, year of the long dry season. The sun was falling in gold streaks over the palace walls when the sailor staggered into the courtyard, clothes stiff with salt, lips cracked like old leather. He carried no weapon, no bag, only a rag-wrapped lump the size of a goat's heart. When the Ooni's guard stopped him, the man whispered in a hoarse and trembling voice, "Take me to the king. I have brought him a piece of the world's edge." The palace chamber was thick with the smell of camwood and burning palm oil. The Ooni of Ife, resplendent in coral beads and white agbada that shimmered like moonlit water, sat on the throne. Beside him, the chiefs leaned forward, curious. The sailor unwrapped the bundle and the room gasped. Inside lay a shard of ice. Not the kind that clings in a calabash. No, this was ocean-born, hard as carved stone, holding the ghost of a wind so cold that it made even the bravest warrior's fingers ache just to touch it. The sailor still poured out, a place beyond the farthest sea, where the water froze solid, where white mountains floated like spirits, and the air could kill a man in 3 breaths. He called it the White Abyss. Ships that sailed there never returned, except his, and even he had not truly reached it. Most in the court laughed. Stories for drunks, backed Chief Odetola, slapping his knee. But the Ooni did not laugh. His eyes, sharp and patient as a hunter, stayed fixed on the ice until he began to sweat under the warm Ife air. Then he said simply, "We will find this abyss. We will bring its spirit home." The chiefs blinked, unsure if he was serious, but the Ooni was already issuing commands. Build ships larger than any Yoruba eyes had seen before. Gather warriors from the farthest villages. Bring the finest navigators, the boldest traders, and yes, the strangest man in the kingdom, Baba Fagbami, the witch doctor of doom. Baba Fagbami arrived barefoot, staff in one hand, a god of bitter kola in the other. His eyes were cloudy, his bed tangled with cowries, and his every sentence began with, "I have seen it in a dream and it will end badly." He predicted storms, mutiny, giant sea monsters, and even that the Ooni's prized parrot would drown. No one liked him, but the Ooni insisted, the man who can see the end before the beginning is worth carrying to the middle. The shipyards of Lagos roared with life. Canoe builders, smiths, and rope weavers worked under the command of Olaya the navigator, a woman whose maps were so precise, even the Portuguese traders whispered her name with respect. "Beyond the noon seas," she said when told the plan, "that is where maps end and imagination begins." But she grinned and joined anyway. As the fleet prepared, the Ooni made a proclamation. Any man or woman who wished to go would be fed for life on return. Any who refused will still sing their names in praise songs, but only those who went will taste history. The market square exploded with excitement. Farmers left their yam heaps. Hunters abandoned the forest for the ducks. Even drummers begged for a place, claiming no journey is blessed without music. And then came the gifts, cowries, charms, and in one case a goat named Don't Die, given by a worried grandmother to her departing son. On the day of departure, the entire kingdom gathered at the shore. The ships, massive double-hulled beauties with bright sails painted in ancestral symbols, sat in the water like resting leopards. The Ooni himself would lead from the flagship Olukon's Breath. Beside him stood Olaya with her roll maps, and sulking in the corner, Baba Fagbami, already chewing bitter cola and muttering, "The ocean is hungry today. I can smell it." The drummer struck, the sails billowed, the crowd roared, and the fleet slid into the deep glittering blue. They had no idea that before they saw the white abyss, they would face things no song had ever warned them about. The Gulf of Guinea was kind that morning. Skies blue as fresh indigo cloth, waves gentle as a sleeping baby. The fleet moved like a parade, sails flashing the red, white, and black of Ife's royal colors. Children ran along the shore until their legs ached, shouting blessings and rude jokes in equal measure. On the Olukon's Breath, the Ooni stood at the prow, one hand resting on the carved figurehead of the sea goddess herself. Olaya was beside him, plotting their first course towards the Canary Current. And in the corner, Baba Fagbami was chewing another bitter cola, looking at the sky as if it had offended him. "Mark my words," he muttered to a drummer. "Before the second moon rises, we will face an enemy we cannot stab." The drummer on face tapped his talking drum and sang in Yoruba, "Baba says doom is coming, but doom should come with palm wine." They had barely cleared the third sunrise when canoes appeared on the horizon. Slim, fast, and full of men in leopard skin caps. The banners told the story, "Warriors of Benin." Benin and Ife had been in a cold rivalry for decades, each claiming to be the true heart of the gods' favor. Word had clearly reached them that the Ooni was on some grand journey, and jealousy had sharpened their paddles. A horn blasted. The Benin canoes fanned out, cutting across the Yoruba path, and at the head of their formation, not spears, not guns, but a small army of witch doctors. Painted head to toe in chalk and charcoal, rattles at their waists, they chanted in a low stomach-twisting rhythm. Baba Fagbami stopped mid-Kolakchu. "Ah, this is bad. This is very bad. That is the first time witch doctors have come to war instead of warriors." The Benin witch doctors began their battle magic, throwing white dust into the wind, smearing good blood on the sides of their canoes, and chanting curses so wild that one Yoruba paddler dropped his oar just from fright. Olaya snorted. "This is not a battle, this is theater." But theater or not, the wind suddenly died. The sails went slack. The fleet slowed. The Benin canoes surged forward, with their witch doctors cackling like vultures. The Ooni didn't blink. He turned to the drummers. "Louder, play the Shango call." The drums erupted into the thunder rhythm of Shango, god of lightning. At that cue, the Yoruba war chanters joined in, their voices so fierce that even the sea seemed to shiver. And then suddenly, crack! A bolt of lightning split the sky. No rain, no clouds, just pure screaming light. It struck the water between the fleets. The shockwave sent the Benin canoes skittering like startled fish. Even Baba Fagbami was impressed. "Well, maybe doom is running late." The Benin warriors paddled back without shame. After all, no one fights lightning. 2 days later, the sea began to sparkle at night. First, just flecks of light, then full glowing waves. The crew whispered of mermaids guiding them, but Baba Fagbami's eyes narrowed. Not mermaids, spirits. They lure you off course. Sure enough, the compass beads on Olaya's chat box began to drift, pulling them east instead of south. The Ooni ordered all lookouts doubled. That night, one canoe vanished without a sound, crew and all, leaving only a floating calabash. They recovered it at dawn. Inside was a single bitter cola. Everyone turned to look at Baba Fagbami. He raised both hands. "Don't look at me. I didn't even like those men." By the end of the first week, the yams were sprouting mold and the fish barrels had begun to stink. The hunters grumbled, the drummers stopped playing midday, and two warriors began a heated debate about whether they had been cursed at Benin after all. One hot afternoon, 3 paddlers approached the Ooni with the air of men about to demand something risky. "Your Majesty," one began, "we believe it to be wise to turn back." The Ooni's eyes locked on them like twin spear tips. "If you wish to turn back, you will do so swimming." They thought about it. Then, as if by magic, they suddenly remembered they were actually very committed to the mission. By the end of Act 2, the fleet still sailed. Battered, hungry, but together. The Ooni's confidence was intact. Olaya's map still pointed south, and Baba Fagbami, well, he had just predicted that in 7 sleeps they would meet a bird the size of a house. And in this journey, that felt completely possible. The sea's warmth faded day by day. At first it was subtle, just a sharper breeze at night, a goosebump or two when paddlers paused to rest. But by the 10th dawn, their breath hung in the air like ghost smoke, and the men from the hottest parts of the Yoruba kingdom began wrapping extra cloth around their necks like suspicious grandmothers. The Ooni remained unbothered, striding across the deck of the Olokun's breath as if it were still the market square in Ife. He wore his thickest coral beads, a leopard skin cloak, and a smile so calm that it irritated everyone else. Olaiya, in the meantime, had started measuring the stars each night with the precision of a man who believed numbers were the only thing standing between them and disaster. And then there was Baba Fagbami. Baba Fagbami had been quiet for 3 days straight, chewing his kola nut slower, staring at the sky as if it had offended him. On the 4th day, he spoke. "The cold is not natural. We have angered the sea spirits. They will test us before we see the land of ice." No one asked how he knew this. They had learnt better. It began as a thin mist, calling low across the waves. Then it thickened until they couldn't see more than a few canoe lengths ahead. The sound changed too. The slap of paddles dulled, replaced by an airy humming. At first, they thought it was the wind in the sails, but the sound was too human. Olaya's face drained of color. "It's coming from the fog." The humming grew into a woman's voice, rich and sweet, singing in Yoruba, but no one could agree on the song. Each man heard the voice of his own mother, wife, or lover. One paddler actually dropped his oar and stood, eyes glassy, ready to step overboard. 2 others followed, grinning as if walking towards a wedding. The Ooni's voice cut through the fog like a spear. "Sit, now!" The voice stopped, just like that. The fog began to thin, and the singing was gone. Baba Fagbami spat into the water. "That was no spirit of the land. That was a spirit of the deep, and she is not done with us." For 3 more days, Baba Fagbami kept everyone on edge with prophecies. Day 1, a whale the size of a palace will block our path before sunset. They saw nothing but flying fish. Day 2, a storm will strike and scatter our canoes. The day was so calm they could see their own reflections in the water. Day 3, we will lose a man to the sky. Everyone laughed, until a sudden gust caught a sleeping paddler's mat and sent it flying into the sea. No man was lost, but the witch doctor claimed partial victory. The cold deepened. One morning, the lookouts began shouting. On the horizon, a dark speck grew larger and larger until it took shape, a bird. Not just any bird. Its wings were as wide as the Ooni's palace, feathers white as powdered chalk, eyes black and unblinking. It circled above the fleet once, twice, then let out a cry so loud that the sea itself seemed to shiver. Baba Fagbami whispered, "The messenger of the land of ice." The creature dived, not to attack, but to snatch a fish straight from the ocean surface. Then, with a single beat of its wings, it was gone. leaving the fleet stunned into silence. The Oni broke the moment. If the bird can survive in the cold, so can we. By now, fingers were numbed, lips cracked, and every breath burned the chest. The men began hallucinating warm fires and pepper soup. One claimed he saw his late grandmother sitting on the waves, beckoning him to join her for amala. But then, there it was. At first, just a faint white glow at the edge of the world. Then sharper, taller, cliffs of ice rising from the sea like the walls of heaven itself. Antarctica. Ile-Ife fell to his knees. The paddlers shouted and hugged. Even Baba Fagbami smiled. But before they could land, a deep rumble rolled across the waves. Somewhere in the distance, a wall of moving ice cracked and shifted. The land of ice was welcoming them with a warning. The first thing they noticed as they neared the frozen shore was the sound. Not the roar of the sea or the whistle of the wind. This was a cracking, a deep thunder that rolled under their feet. The ice itself was alive, groaning as if irritated by visitors. The second thing they noticed was the smell. Cold has no scent, but here the air carries something sharp, almost metallic, like the taste of biting your tongue. It was a place untouched by palm oil, pepper soup, or the warm smoke of home fires. The paddlers stared up at towering cliffs of ice, blue in some parts, blinding white in others, each chunk big enough to hide an entire village. Ile-Ife muttered, "We are ants in the palace of giants." The witch doctor had been suspiciously quiet again, chewing his kola nuts as they searched for a safe place to land. Then, out of nowhere, "Before our feet touch the ice, the spirit will test our courage one last time." Everyone rolled their eyes, but this time, before sunset, it happened. They had just found a narrow inlet where the ice met calm water when a dark shape emerged from the sea. At first, they thought it was a rock. Then it moved and roared. The roar was wrong, confused like a man trying to imitate a lion after too much palm wine. The creature was massive, sleek, and silver gray with huge black eyes. It didn't attack, just slid up on the ice and began slapping his flippers like a talking drum. Baba Fagbami whispered, "A guardian of the land of ice." Ile-Ife said, "That's not a guardian, that's a fat fish with teeth." The fat fish hissed, splashed them, and slid away, leaving them soaked and shivering. Finally, the Oni stepped forward, boots crunching on snow for the first time in Yoruba history. The others followed, each stamping down as if the ice might crack under them and reveal some ancient frozen monster. For a brief moment, everyone forgot the cold, the hunger, the endless paddling. They were standing where no one from their world had ever stood. The Oni had brought a ceremonial banner, rich red fabric, golden embroidery, and a royal seal to plant on the highest point they could find. But here was the problem. Every time they tried to climb an icy hill, they slid back down. Every time they tried to hammer the pole into the ground, the wind yanked it sideways. Baba Fagbami suggested summoning the spirits of the ice to hold it in place. Ile-Ife suggested tying the pole to a rock. In the end, it was the smallest paddler who fixed it by jamming it into a snowdrift and sitting on it.
They had reached Antarctica, yes, but the Oni insisted they push inland to find the true heart of the land of ice. What followed was the most exhausting trek of the journey. Boots froze, beds iced over. One man's breath froze into tiny crystals on his eyelashes. Then came the whiteout, a blizzard so thick they could only see the back of the man in front of them. For hours, they stumbled blindly. Baba Fagbami shouted that they were walking in circles. Ile-Ife shouted back that they weren't walking at all, they were just sliding downhill very slowly. Finally, the storm broke, and there it was. A frozen plateau under a sun that looked close enough to touch. The world below spread like an endless white sea. The Oni planted his staff. The Yoruba have touched the edge of the earth. If arriving at Antarctica was a miracle, leaving it felt like a test of divine patience. The Ooni had promised that once they planted the staff and blessed the land, the journey back could be as smooth as fresh palm wine. But the land of ice wasn't done with them. Their canoes had frozen into the shoreline overnight. Not a little frost, frozen solid. They tried chipping away with spears, knives, even Baba Fagbami's staff, which he swore was for spirit work, not ice breaking. It took hours before the ice cracked, and when it did, it made a noise so loud they all froze, thinking some sleeping ice giant had just been woken. The waters near Antarctica were calm when they arrived. Now, it was as if the ocean had heard of their victory and decided to give them a parting slap. Waves rose higher than palm trees. The wind was so strong it turned the man's shout into a whisper before it reached the next canoe. And then, the iceberg. They had heard of them, but nothing prepares you for a mountain of frozen water drifting towards you like it has bad intentions. Olaya screamed, "Paddle like you are running from your wife's elder brother." They dodged it, barely, scraping past so close that the ice shaved off part of a canoe side like a yam slice. For the first time, everyone listened to the witch doctor without complaint. He stood up, eyes rolled back, muttering into the wind. "The sea will try to keep us, but the spirits of home are stronger." Then he tossed a pouch of red powder into the water. No one knew what it was, pepper, ground cola, or just dyed sand, but the waves seemed to ease afterwards. Olaya whispered to the paddler beside him, "Even if it's just luck, don't tell him, he will charge us extra." The closer they got to warmer waters, the more their spirit rose. Stories began to grow, not just of the trip, but of what they would say when they got home. By the time they reached Ile-Ife, the story had tripled in size. The ice had been alive and tried to eat them. The fat fish had been a half-fish, half-man king of the Antarctic waters. Baba Fagbami had summoned thunder to split a mountain. The Ooni had spoken to the sun, and the sun had bowed in respect. When the first houses of Ile-Ife came into view, drums broke out before the paddles even touched shore. Word had spread faster than the canoes. The Ooni stepped onto the sand, raised the staff, and declared, "We have touched the edge of the earth and brought the spirit of Ife to a land that knew no drums." Women ululated, men clapped, and children shouted questions about snow and sea monsters. Baba Fagbami, grinning, added quietly to a group of boys, "And remember, it was I who told them we would win. Now, fetch me my kola." Within weeks, the story was no longer just a story. It was a song, a dance, a carved mural. Fathers told it to sons, traders told it to strangers, and praise singers told it in the market until people believed Antarctica itself must still be echoing with the sound of Yoruba drums. And somewhere in the Ooni's palace, a banner of red and gold, slightly wind-torn but still proud, hung. It was never about conquering land. It was about proving that no place was too far, too cold, or too strange for the spirit of Ife to reach. This is Ancestria. We think from a different screen. We saw the part that almost happened. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe for more.